There is a strange assumption in the modern world that a meaningful life must be a visible life. We are taught, often without realizing it, that importance is measured by attention, that success is validated by recognition, and that happiness grows in proportion to the number of eyes watching us. From an early age, people learn to announce their achievements, display their ambitions, and seek confirmation from strangers. The result is a society filled with noise, endless comparison, and quiet exhaustion. Yet the Stoics understood something profoundly different. They believed that the strongest life is often the least visible one. They knew that peace is rarely found in the spotlight, and that true power emerges not from being seen, but from being grounded within oneself. The secret power of a quiet life begins with a simple realization. Most of the things that disturb human beings are not external events. They are reactions to external events. The criticism of another person is not the problem. The fear of criticism is the problem. The success of another person is not the problem. The comparison that follows is the problem. The uncertainty of the future is not the problem. The desperate need to control the future is the problem. The Stoics spent centuries teaching that suffering often arises when we attempt to dominate things that were never ours to control. This was the foundation of what is now known as the dichotomy of control. According to the Stoics, some things belong to us and some things do not. Our judgments, choices, actions, and character belong to us. The opinions of others, economic conditions, social trends, and countless events of fortune do not. The moment a person begins to understand this distinction, a remarkable transformation occurs. Their energy stops leaking into endless battles with reality. They stop chasing approval that can disappear overnight. They stop trying to manipulate outcomes beyond their reach. Instead, they focus entirely on the quality of their own decisions. A quiet life is powerful because it naturally directs attention toward what can actually be controlled. When you withdraw from constant external validation, you begin to hear your own thoughts again. When you stop performing for an audience, you start examining your character. When you no longer measure yourself against the standards of the crowd, you become free to pursue what is genuinely valuable. Consider the life of a person who spends every day seeking recognition. Every decision becomes a calculation. Every action is filtered through the question, what will others think? Even accomplishments lose their meaning because they are no longer pursued for their intrinsic worth. They become performances. The tragedy is that no amount of external praise can satisfy a mind that depends on praise for its identity. The hunger simply grows stronger. The Stoics recognized this trap long before the modern age amplified it through technology and constant connectivity. They understood that dependence on public opinion is a form of slavery. A person who requires admiration to feel worthy has surrendered control of their emotional state to other people. Their peace can be stolen by criticism. Their confidence can be shaken by rejection. Their happiness can be dictated by strangers. A quiet life breaks this chain. When you become less concerned with being noticed, you gain something far more valuable than attention. You gain independence. Your actions begin to emerge from conviction rather than performance. You work because the work matters. You learn because wisdom matters. You improve because excellence matters. The opinions of the crowd become background noise rather than guiding principles. This is why silence occupies such a central place in Stoic philosophy. Silence is not weakness. Silence is restraint. It is the discipline of refusing to waste energy on unnecessary reactions. Most people reveal their plans too early. They announce ambitions before taking action. They seek encouragement before earning results. Then they wonder why motivation fades. The Stoics would have considered this a dangerous habit. Every declaration creates a subtle temptation. Once others praise the intention, the mind often experiences a false sense of accomplishment. The reward arrives before the work is completed. Energy that should have been invested in action becomes consumed by discussion. Instead of building, people begin talking about building. Instead of progressing, they begin performing progress. The quiet individual operates differently. They understand that goals grow stronger in private. They work while others speculate. They prepare while others announce. They improve while others seek recognition. Their focus remains on execution rather than appearance. History repeatedly demonstrates the power of this principle. Many of the greatest achievements were forged in obscurity long before they became visible. Long periods of solitude, discipline, and preparation often precede extraordinary results. Yet society rarely celebrates these invisible years. People notice the outcome but overlook the countless silent sacrifices that made it possible. The Stoics urged individuals to embrace this hidden stage of development. They believed character is built in moments that nobody sees. It is easy to appear disciplined when others are watching. It is far more difficult to remain disciplined when nobody would know the difference. The private moment is where integrity reveals itself. Imagine two individuals pursuing the same goal. One constantly broadcasts every step, seeking acknowledgement and reassurance. The other quietly commits to the process and focuses entirely on daily improvement. Over time, the difference becomes enormous. The first person becomes emotionally dependent on external responses. The second becomes emotionally dependent on internal standards. One develops fragility. The other develops strength. This strength becomes especially important when facing criticism. Few things control human behavior more effectively than the fear of negative judgment. Entire lives are shaped by the desire to avoid disapproval. People suppress their opinions, abandon their goals, and betray their values simply to remain acceptable in the eyes of others. The Stoics regarded this as a profound mistake. Marcus Aurelius spent much of his life reflecting on the fleeting nature of public opinion. He understood that the same crowd capable of praising someone today might condemn them tomorrow. Human judgments shift constantly. They are influenced by emotions, trends, misunderstandings, and incomplete information. To anchor one's identity to such unstable foundations is to guarantee instability. A quiet life offers protection from this chaos. When your sense of worth comes from your character rather than public approval, criticism loses much of its power. This does not mean becoming arrogant or refusing feedback. The Stoic approach is more sophisticated. Useful criticism is examined and learned from. Meaningless criticism is discarded. The key difference is that neither praise nor condemnation determines self-worth. The individual who lives quietly becomes increasingly immune to emotional manipulation. They no longer feel compelled to defend themselves against every accusation. They no longer rush to prove their value. They recognize that truth does not require constant advertisement. This principle can be difficult to accept because modern culture often rewards visibility. We are encouraged to react immediately, respond publicly, and defend ourselves continuously. Yet the Stoics understood that many conflicts survive only because people keep feeding them attention. Silence, when used wisely, can dissolve countless unnecessary battles. A person insults you. You do not react. A person misunderstands you. You remain composed. A person attempts to provoke you. You refuse participation. In each case, you preserve your energy while maintaining control over yourself. The true victory is not defeating another person. The true victory is remaining master of your own mind. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood aspects of a quiet life. Many people confuse quietness with passivity. They assume silence means weakness. They imagine that stepping away from constant visibility reflects a lack of ambition. In reality, the opposite is often true. The quiet life requires extraordinary discipline. It demands the ability to resist distractions that capture everyone else's attention. It requires patience when immediate gratification is available. It requires confidence without applause and determination without recognition. Most people want the rewards of greatness. Few people want the solitude that often precedes greatness. The Stoics taught that self-mastery is the highest form of power because it cannot be taken away by external circumstances. Wealth can disappear, reputation can collapse, status can evaporate, but a disciplined mind remains valuable under every condition. This is why adversity plays such an important role in Stoic philosophy. Rather than viewing obstacles as interruptions, Stoics viewed them as opportunities for growth. Every challenge becomes training. Every setback becomes instruction. Every difficulty becomes raw material for stronger character. The quiet life allows this transformation to occur more effectively because it removes the constant pressure to appear successful. When people become obsessed with appearances, they begin hiding failures. They avoid risks that might damage their image. They prioritize perception over growth. The Stoic chooses a different path. Failure becomes acceptable because learning matters more than reputation. Difficulty becomes acceptable because growth matters more than comfort. Temporary embarrassment becomes acceptable because long-term development matters more than immediate approval. This attitude is captured perfectly in the Stoic concept of amor fati, the love of fate. Rather than merely tolerating adversity, the Stoics encouraged embracing it. They believed that every event contains the potential for wisdom if approached correctly. Imagine a storm striking a powerful oak tree. The storm does not create the tree's strength. It reveals it. The roots either hold or they do not. Human character operates in much the same way. Difficult circumstances reveal what comfort conceals. A quiet life creates the conditions necessary for this inner strengthening. Without constant distraction, people are forced to confront themselves. They encounter their weaknesses, fears, insecurities, and habits. This confrontation is uncomfortable, but it is essential. Growth begins where avoidance ends. Many individuals spend years escaping silence because silence exposes truths they would rather ignore. Noise becomes a refuge. Constant activity becomes a distraction. Endless entertainment becomes an escape. Yet the Stoics understood that wisdom emerges from reflection. The person who can sit alone with their thoughts possesses an advantage that cannot be measured. They are no longer running from themselves. They are learning from themselves. They are building a relationship with their own mind that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. As this process continues, something remarkable happens. The need for constant validation begins to fade. The urge to compete for attention weakens. The pressure to impress others gradually disappears. In its place emerges a quieter form of confidence, not the confidence that demands recognition, not the confidence that seeks applause, but the confidence that comes from knowing who you are, what you value, and what you are willing to endure in pursuit of those values. This is the secret power that the Stoics discovered centuries ago. It is not flashy. It does not attract immediate admiration. It often develops unnoticed. Yet over time it creates individuals who remain steady while others are shaken, focused while others are distracted, and peaceful while others are trapped in endless cycles of comparison and approval-seeking. The world will always reward noise in the short term. Attention is easy to notice. Visibility is easy to measure. Popularity is easy to celebrate. But beneath the surface, another kind of power exists. It grows in silence. It grows in discipline. It grows in solitude. And for those willing to cultivate it, it becomes one of the greatest sources of freedom a human being can ever possess. The deeper you travel into a quiet life, the more you begin to recognize a truth that most people never fully understand. Freedom is not obtained by controlling the world around you. Freedom is obtained by controlling your dependence on the world around you. This distinction changes everything. Most individuals spend their lives negotiating with reality. They tell themselves they will finally be at peace when circumstances improve, when their finances reach a certain level, when they gain enough recognition, when they find the perfect relationship, or when they receive the validation they have been seeking for years. Their peace is postponed indefinitely because it depends on conditions they cannot fully command. The Stoics refused to build their happiness on such unstable foundations. They understood that external conditions are always changing. Fortune rises and falls. Relationships evolve. Public opinion shifts. Opportunities appear and disappear. To attach your emotional stability to these variables is to guarantee instability. Quiet life teaches a radically different lesson. It teaches that peace begins the moment you stop demanding that reality conform to your preferences. This does not mean abandoning ambition. It does not mean becoming indifferent to improvement. The Stoics were not passive observers of life. They worked, built, led, and contributed. But they acted with a profound understanding that effort belongs to them while outcomes do not. This distinction creates extraordinary resilience. Consider how most people respond when plans fail. They experience frustration not merely because an objective was missed, but because they unconsciously believed success was guaranteed if they worked hard enough. Reality then reminds them that countless factors exist beyond their control. The Stoic response is different. A Stoic focuses entirely on what can be controlled: preparation, effort, discipline, integrity, and courage. If the outcome is favorable, they accept it with gratitude. If the outcome is unfavorable, they accept it with composure. In both cases, their self-respect remains intact because it was never dependent on results alone. The quiet life reinforces this mindset because it shifts attention away from appearances and toward principles when nobody is watching. Your relationship with yourself becomes impossible to ignore. That you begin asking different questions. Did I act with integrity? Did I honor my commitments? Did I remain disciplined when temptation appeared? Did I respond wisely to adversity? These questions matter far more than questions about popularity, recognition, or social approval. They measure the quality of character rather than the visibility of performance. This is why so many Stoic teachings emphasize daily self-examination. At the end of each day, the Stoics encouraged honest reflection, not self-condemnation, not self-pity. Honest assessment. Where did I fall short? What did I do well? How can I improve tomorrow? Such practices seem simple, yet they possess immense power. A person who consistently evaluates themselves becomes increasingly difficult to deceive. They develop self-awareness. They identify weaknesses before those weaknesses become destructive habits. They take responsibility for their growth instead of blaming external circumstances. The modern world often encourages the opposite approach. It teaches people to monitor everyone else. Social comparison becomes a daily ritual. Attention is constantly directed outward. As a result, many individuals know more about strangers than they know about themselves. The quiet life reverses this pattern. Attention returns inward, energy returns inward, responsibility returns inward, and this is where genuine transformation begins. One of the greatest obstacles to self-mastery is the craving for immediate gratification. Human beings naturally seek comfort, pleasure, and convenience. There is nothing inherently wrong with these desires. The danger emerges when they become masters rather than servants. The Stoics observe that every undisciplined desire carries a hidden cost. The desire for comfort can weaken resilience. The desire for pleasure can weaken judgment. The desire for approval can weaken independence. The desire for distraction can weaken focus. A quiet life provides an opportunity to break these chains because it removes many of the influences that constantly stimulate them. In silence, You notice how often your mind seeks escape. You notice the impulse to check for validation. You notice the discomfort of boredom. You notice the resistance that appears whenever meaningful work becomes difficult. Most people never observe these patterns clearly because they immediately distract themselves. The Stoics encouraged a different response. Observe the impulse. Understand it. Refuse to become its servant. Every time you resist unnecessary temptation, self-respect grows. Every time you choose discipline over convenience, strength grows. Every time you prioritize long-term purpose over short-term comfort, character grows. These moments may appear insignificant, yet they accumulate. Day after day, choice after choice, they create an individual capable of extraordinary consistency. This is one reason why many of history's most influential thinkers valued solitude. Solitude provides a unique environment for self-development. It strips away many of the external pressures that distort judgment. It creates space for reflection. It encourages independence of thought. The person who cannot tolerate solitude often becomes dependent on external stimulation. They require constant noise, constant interaction, and constant distraction. Their inner world remains unexplored. The person who learns to value solitude discovers something different. They discover that silence is not emptiness. Silence is clarity. Within that clarity, priorities become easier to identify. Trivial concerns lose their power. Meaningful goals become more obvious. Unnecessary conflicts become easier to avoid. And perhaps most importantly, the individual begins to understand how much energy has been wasted on things that never truly mattered. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that human life is brief. Every generation believes its concerns are permanent. Every generation eventually disappears. The people who praise us vanish. The people who criticize us vanish. The arguments that consume our attention fade into obscurity. Viewed from this perspective, many sources of anxiety appear surprisingly small. How much of your life has been spent worrying about judgments that no longer matter? How many sleepless nights were devoted to problems that eventually resolved themselves? How much energy was invested in impressing people whose opinions have already been forgotten? The quiet life encourages this broader perspective. It reminds us that time is our most valuable resource, not money. Not status. Not recognition. Time. Every moment spent pursuing meaningless approval is a moment that cannot be recovered. Every hour wasted on resentment is an hour permanently gone. Every day consumed by comparison is a day surrendered to illusions. The Stoics believed that wisdom begins when we recognize the finite nature of existence. This recognition is not depressing, it is liberating. When you understand that life is limited, you become more selective about where your attention goes. You stop volunteering your energy to every controversy. You stop chasing every opportunity for validation. You stop allowing trivial events to dominate your emotional life. Instead, you focus on what truly deserves your effort. Meaningful work. Personal growth. Strong character. Service to others. Inner peace. These become the foundations of a life that remains stable even when circumstances become difficult. And difficulties will come. No philosophy worthy of respect promises. Otherwise, the Stoics never claimed that life would become easy. They simply taught that suffering becomes more manageable when interpreted correctly. A setback can become a lesson. A failure can become preparation. A disappointment can become wisdom. An obstacle can become a path forward. This principle separates resilient individuals from fragile ones. Fragile people expect reality to accommodate their preferences. Resilient people adapt themselves to reality. The quiet life strengthens this adaptability because it reduces emotional dependence on external conditions. The individual learns to derive satisfaction from effort rather than outcomes, from growth rather than recognition, and from character rather than reputation. Eventually, a profound shift occurs that the person who once chased attention begins to value privacy. The person who once sought applause begins to value competence. The person who once feared solitude begins to value reflection. The person who once reacted impulsively begins to value restraint. This transformation is subtle. It often goes unnoticed by the outside world. Yet internally everything changes. The individual becomes less vulnerable to manipulation, less vulnerable to trends, less vulnerable to criticism, less vulnerable to disappointment. Their center of gravity moves inward, and this inward stability creates a rare kind of strength. Not the strength of domination, not the strength of intimidation, but the strength of self-possession, the ability to remain calm in chaos, the ability to remain disciplined in temptation, the ability to remain focused in distraction, the ability to remain faithful to principles when circumstances become difficult. This is the hidden reward of a quiet life. It does not promise fame. It does not guarantee wealth. It does not ensure admiration. What it offers is something far more enduring: freedom from unnecessary dependence, freedom from endless comparison, freedom from the exhausting need to prove yourself, freedom from allowing external events to dictate internal peace. The Stoics understood that a person who masters themselves possesses a form of wealth that cannot be stolen. Economic conditions cannot remove it. Public opinion cannot remove it. Misfortune cannot remove it, because its source is internal. Its source is character. Its source is discipline. Its source is wisdom, and these qualities become stronger with practice. The world will continue encouraging noise. It will continue rewarding spectacle, attention, and visibility. Many people will spend their entire lives pursuing these things, believing they hold the key to fulfillment. Yet beneath the noise, another path remains available, a path of reflection rather than reaction, a path of discipline rather than impulse, a path of purpose rather than performance. A path of inner mastery rather than external validation. The Stoics walked this path centuries ago. Their message remains just as powerful today as it was then. Guard your mind, protect your attention, master your reactions, accept what you cannot control, improve what you can. Welcome adversity as a teacher. And never forget that the strongest foundations are often built far from public view. For in the end, the greatest achievement is not becoming known by the world. The greatest achievement is becoming known by yourself. And when that happens, when your peace no longer depends on applause, when your confidence no longer depends on recognition, and when your purpose no longer depends on approval, you discover the secret power that the Stoics understood all along. A quiet life is not a smaller life. It is a deeper one, and within that depth lies a freedom that few people ever experience, but those who do would never willingly trade for all the noise in the world.